As part of the hunt for my next Grail watch, Glashütte Original is a brand on top of my list I was eager to examine. In particular is this PanoMaticLunar, which I've wanted to review for so long. So today, finally, I get to see if this is possibly the Grail I have been looking for. So let's find out. Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. Today, I finally get a look at the PanoMaticLunar. Here it is. A big thank you to Moya Fine Jewelers for lending it in. They are an authorized dealer for Glashütte Original. Now, I'll do a quick wristwatch check wearing my Girard-Perregaux. This is the classic with the power reserve that I recently acquired, my final purchase of 2023. It's on the rainbow strap from Holbens. This is made by Hirsch, but I got it from Holbens and it's just a winning combination. But let's get into this heavenly creature. If you didn't know much about watches, except a few high-end German brand names, you could easily mistakenly think, at first glance, this is an Lange und Söhne, or ALS, as I'll refer to them from now on. And the reason is, despite Glashütte Original only being founded in 1994 in their present state, Glashütte Original shares its roots and hometown with a famed group of watchmakers that came to Glashütte in the Saxony state of Germany, especially to manufacture watch components and pocket watches in the 1840s. This supremely talented horological rat pack, if you will, included Ferdinand A. Lange, and their collective technical innovations led to a set of design and engineering principles, all proudly present in today's watch, becoming collectively known as the Glashütte style of watchmaking, which we will explore more of later on. But despite being known as the birthplace of the German watchmaking industry, things didn't go smoothly. The town was almost destroyed entirely towards the end of World War II and subsequently fell into state-run obscurity behind the Iron Curtain, until the collapse of the Soviet Union and the reunification of Germany. But what is crucial to understand beyond all things in order to truly appreciate this watch is the essential three different schools of German design when it comes to their watches. Firstly, there's the traditional neoclassical embellishment of the pre-wristwatch age. Secondly, the clinical minimalism of Bauhaus and the post-war modernism of less is more. And finally, the ruthless, utile giganticism, austerity, efficiency and robustness of militaristic horology. The PanoMatic, no matter which version, is a polyglot of the three distinctly Germanic design languages. So much so, I think it elevates it beyond the other four collections within the Glashütte Original brand. In fact, every time I think of Glashütte Original, the first watch I think of is a PanoMatic, and I think that goes for a lot of people as well. So the Glashütte style is not just about the way it looks, but also it refers to the mechanics. If we flip it over and we see that beautiful sapphire exhibition case back, and it goes without saying the entire case is stainless steel with really exquisitely done finishing. The movement is the caliber 90-02, which is truly completely in-house produced. And again, we see this kind of decentralized layout, the famed Glashütte 3/4 plate setup. We have absolutely sumptuous decoration, striping, beveling, thermal bluing, polishing, the works. My favourite, and this is what really reminds me of my grandfather GHW's Charles Rodgham, that I talked about recently in the GP unboxing, is that incredible hand-engraved balance bridge. They've even gilded it too, which is a very old school technique. I just love it. This level of craftsmanship, you see it in early Renaissance clocks of Peter Heinlein, the inventor of the first watch in Nuremberg. So it definitely evokes those kind of feelings and references. That it's a nice link back, despite the modernism, the stark contrast of the minimalism employed in the rest of the design. The micro rotor is skeletonized, and just like in my GP, at the end they have a heavier 21 karat weight for the oscillating mass. In my GP they used platinum because obviously platinum is heavier than gold, but for me the real star of the show has to be that double swan neck regulator. It's something you don't typically see in modern watches. This basically allows twice the level of precision in regulation with ultra fine adjustment, and I've never ever seen anything other than Cosc tolerances in its accuracy. But despite this old way of doing things, do not be fooled. This is very contemporary movement in its performance. You're going to see a 42-hour power reserve, a contemporary 28,800 VPH, a hacking manual wind, and a really snappy, good quick set as well. And lastly, one of the things I appreciate over the Lange, which you'll see over there, is that the framed date window. I think actually Glashütte Original do it better because there's no framing. You can actually view it from angles. I remember when I reviewed the Lange donkeys years ago, the framed section around the date was quite high, so you couldn't actually see it as well as the way they've done it. And also the layout, it's flipped. I have to say, I think this makes more use of that space. The deconstruction of complications into their own spaces on the dial is not just the dictum of Fibonaccian proportions, but a deliberate placement in order not to muffle any veneration or the clarity of each respective function. When there is overlap, like in the subseconds, the hash marks of the hour and minutes still continue without the impediment of any readability. We have the immediate time on the left, shown with subtle concentric guilloche subdials, then the astronomical complications of a hand-milled moon phase and date display on the right. The loomed blued lance hands are of martial tradition, combined with the steel case's profile, which, if you had not seen it from the front or the back, and only from the side, you could be fooled into thinking it was intended for something more as a tool or an instrument. The sparseness of the surfaces, especially with the galvanic finishes on the asymmetrical dial, evokes the minimalism of a Walter Gropius building. Then combined effectively with the old world classicism of elements like the bosom cut apertures for the moon phase, the use of mostly traditional Baskerville style typefaces, and the most iconic feature of all, the opera house date window. This was inspired by the legendary 5-minute clock inside the auditorium of the Semper Opera House of Dresden. This 180-year-old institution is revered the world over, and for me personally, it's almost like a holy site on top of my bucket list to visit, because many of my favorite Wagner and Strauss operas premiered there. While ALS was certainly the first to bring this amalgamation of design elements to the market with their Lange 1, the GO is anything but a homage. It's simply a product of the same place, the same Glashüttian watchmaking tradition and design language. However, there is one massive advantage, aside from its competitive value, against its former, much more costly paesano, ALS. Glashütte Original is not contaminated by association from the wartime murky past that still very much haunts ALS. GO still gets to enjoy the connection with the innovative and prestigious Ferdinand A. Lange and everything he contributed to the town of Glashütte, who passed away long before the dark clouds of conflict and extermination descended over Europe in both world wars. GO also seems to have escaped unscathed from the admirations of the watch hipster fake journalist crowd, who unfortunately adore ALS and that I recently talked about in my Amiga Speedmaster video. Do have a look back if you missed it, because everything I said in that video definitely applies here as well. One thing the Lange 1 got right off the bat was its use of one congruent, bold typeface, possibly two if you include the Roman numerals. With this PanoMatic, there is no less than 6 different styles of typeface on the dial alone, and more on the rest of the watch. While incongruous for those with perfect vision, it's not really a worry for my aging eyes. Speaking of dials and legibility, unlike the previously unboxed PanoMatic calendar that we briefly took a look at a few months ago, there is no loom plots on the dial to correspond with the loomed hands. While it was certainly diminutive on that watch, it did however add an extra level of functionality. It's a real shame it's omitted here, and I'm not really sure why. So the buckle, while beautifully constructed and expertly finished just like everything in this watch, it is a tad oversized in relation to the rest of the watch. Makes it feel a bit clumsy. I would have preferred a traditional pin and buckle like on my Girard-Perregaux, but then again, maybe I'm too old school. The strap itself is excellent, outstanding, alligator leather with a kind of almost suede interior, so it's nice and soft on your skin, and then the pattern on the outside, very traditional, very restrained. It's not glossy or anything. So the highlight is definitely still, or the focus is definitely on the watch. The crown itself is a little bit difficult to pull out. I wish there was a recessed section there so you could get better purchase, but really not the end of the world. This is the kind of details that you cannot do a review from pictures online. You really have to get to know the watch. I still don't understand why people have those kind of reviews. It's a fake review. It's not a real review. But anyway, this is the kind of details you really have to experience it, learn its nuances and characteristics and all the rest of it. While it certainly meets the urban gentry trademark phrase of being a strap monster, leather-wise, in my opinion, definitely would not work with anything like rubber, anything military, canvas, NATO, etc. This is definitely a great everyday, you know, semi-casual smart, but it's not sporty enough, and it's too formal for kind of sportswear, tracksuit, whatever. And the last negative, of course, is I wish it was a bit thinner. I know the manual wind versions are thinner, but then the Saxonia with the moon phase, I think is under 10 millimeters if I recall correctly, and that's an automatic. So I can't see why they don't do it now with this. And it's a shame that the diameter, I'm trying to think how it would work. There is enough space to house the movement because you see where it screws in. I wish this was 38 millimeters. It just would have been that sweet spot. But the question is, why has Glashütte Original gone a little bit bigger? The oversized watch trend saw its perverse peak during the late 2000s, the embarrassingly awkward result of aspirational marketing gone mad, and the toxic flex culture it spawned. This bigger is better delusion also permeated somewhat into the scale of this watch, or at least its progenitors. The first PanoMatic coming to market around the same time in 2003, and remaining relatively unchanged in proportions, give or take half a millimeter, since then. Compare it to the typical dress watch of a decade earlier from the mid-1990s, you'll see exactly what I mean. While much of its scale is attributable to the necessary stacking of the movement's architecture, micro-rotors historically, like the one in my record-breaking Universal Genève White Shadow, were typically utilized to reduce the height of the watch, and therefore make it more elegant to wear in formal attire, as a true dress watch should be. It's a shame the same cannot be said for this particular watch.
Father, this is the most unbelievable thing I have ever seen, don't you think? Are you German?
The German obsession with scale is deep-rooted and goes far beyond the medieval Teutonic imagery, Wagnerian grandeur, the imperiousness of neoclassical revivalism, and stereotypical perceptions of their economic or industrial might. In many ways, its crescendo was in the unfortunate 12 years of that evil regime, with the deluded machinations of Germania, the monstrous 10,000-room hotel at Prora, the birth of autobahns, and the gargantuan but ironically named mouse tanks of another Saxon, Ferdinand Porsche. It's no different with watches, as we saw their 45mm plus Fliegers. Thankfully, there's little contamination by association here, unlike ALS. The great Jonathan Meades said in his Capolavoro documentary, Jerry Building, that neoclassicism is prone to giganticism, but it's also free of the hints of vulgarity that inform the Baroque. The puritanical Teutonic predilections for serious, often Spartan design also helps to temper the persistently vain opulence found in Glashütte Original's Swiss haute horology rivals, in which often even their most expensive luxury watches seem garish and therefore ironically cheap as a result. The key word to understanding the PanoMatic's allure is balance. There's never too much of one thing from any of the three styles of German watchmaking we talked about earlier that it is inspired by. This is a rookie mistake that even the most well-versed brands still get horribly wrong to this day. This watch proves that disciplined restraint ultimately produces something of quality and long-lasting, luxury without the uncouthness, as it should be. And with a price of around $10,000, most armchair watchmakers who have never set foot in a factory might call it steep, but actually in reality, it's exceptionally well priced. Don't believe me? Well, take just the dial for example. There are 40 different elaborate processes alone to achieve all the different subtle contrasts in textures and finishing. Just think about how much that costs to have a craftsman undertake this, in Germany no less. Not an affordable undertaking. And that's not even including the component manufacturing, actual watchmaking, and everything else required for a proprietary producing brand to operate. While it does diminish the prestige of GO not being independent, and sadly part of the big bad Swatch empire, unlike the mainly outsourced, derivative and now mostly machine-made lower ranks of Swatch, GO enjoys a healthy autonomy, a very different relationship with the mothership that they have to report up to. I've had interactions with pretty much every brand in the Swatch umbrella. Some are better than others. I'm not going to name any names. But there are some brands that are just soulless and corporate, and it comes across immediately. All they care about is profit and visibility, and that's it. Whereas with GO, from my interactions with them, I immediately got a sense that they are proud of what they do. They're invested in the future. They care about it, the watches and the brand, beyond just mere profit. And not to mention, they are a really great group of talented, and not just the watchmakers, the craftsmen, all of that, but even on the business side of it, they're a brand that I would be proud to wear. And I think the more I learn about the industry, the more I value that, and as should you guys. So I'm pleased to report that. In conclusion, this tastefully done, supremely refined and competitively priced watch is something I would certainly choose over the majority of offerings out there. But crucially, it ticks an extra box for me. It's representative, free of any stigma, a rich culture full of music, art, literature, architecture, and so on, of a country I truly admire and respect. I mean, I was named after the opera Tristan and Isolde after all, albeit the Italian version, Tristano. This all speaks to me on a very profound level. I feel and see it every time I gaze upon it. I can hear the music of another prodigal son of Saxony, Johann Sebastian Bach, playing while I sip some Riesling and imagine touring the over 4,000 cultural landmarks of Saxony. Ultimately, I would pick this watch and brand over ALS any day of the week. So there we have it. What do you guys think? Undoubtedly pure class. I have around about a dozen or so watches I still want to investigate, review, and share with you guys before I make that decision on my final Grail watch, so stay tuned. But let me know your thoughts. I really want to hear your feedback on this and this particular brand. Don't forget to like this video, very important indeed, especially if you want to see more free, real, independent, hands-on reviews like this. I'll catch you in the next one. Onwards and upwards. Thank you for watching. Ciao.